Okay, Gerry, first I have to ask you, Moon Mullins. How did you get the nickname? When did you get the nickname?
Well, actually, Moon Mullins was a comic strip character from the 30s, and when I was in junior high school, there was 4 Jerrys on the team, and my coach at the time decided that to eliminate some of the confusion, he put the Moon handle on me, and it stuck. All through high school, college, and into the pros, everybody, all my teammates always called me Moon.
Well, you grew up in sunny Anaheim, right? You
Right.
played at USC. Your junior year, you guys were 10-0-1. You only lost 1 game. Not quite as good your senior year, but at that same time, your junior year, Steelers have a new coach, Chuck Noll. They go 1-13. Pittsburgh, not exactly known for its sunshine. So a couple years later, when you were drafted by the Steelers, what were you thinking?
Well, I took a trip back. They flew me back, and I think it was in February, and landed at Greater Pitt, and had that brown snow coming into the city, and I was thinking to myself, what did I get into here? But went through the Fort Pitt tunnels, and just happened when we came out the other side, the sun broke through, and it looked like the golden triangle was really shining golden, and I was like pretty impressed, with what I saw. But obviously, with their past history, I thought maybe, I had been sent to Siberia.
And when you got to the postseason finally, a couple years into your career, the Steelers had never won a playoff game. Were you aware of that history?
Not really. I know that they had 40 years of mediocrity, and I used to think about Art Rooney Sr., he had such a great attitude, and I was like, all the years of frustration, every day he showed up in the locker room, he always had a positive attitude, win or lose. I just couldn't imagine being that optimistic. And then when we finally won a Super Bowl, I think the highlight of my career was seeing him take that trophy. His eyes were all fogged up, his big Coke glasses, and I'm thinking, finally he reached the top of the mountain, after all those years of frustration. And then obviously 3 more times he did it, but that first time was really special.
You started out, and people may not know this, you're drafted as a tight end. When were you moved to guard?
Well, actually, I was a tight end in college. When I got the call, Dan Rooney called to let me know that the Steelers had drafted me. And then he put Chuck Noll on the line, and Chuck said, don't worry about catching passes or anything. You're going to be an offensive lineman. Put on a little weight, because I was about 235 pounds in college. And I think when I showed up at training camp my rookie year, I was about 245 pounds.
You guys had great offensive lines. I mean, it's amazing when you look back that not too many of those Steelers throughout the 70s, you guys are leading the league in rushing every year, made the Pro Bowl. Did you feel like you were undervalued a little bit around the league?
Well, we were really undersized as a group, mainly because we did a lot of pulling and trapping and running. So we were basically, the guards especially, were more like running backs. We did a lot of outside running. The key, I think, when we got Franco, that was his forte, and he made a living out of running outside the tackles. Smaller people, I probably couldn't have made it on some teams, the big, straight ahead, like Oakland Raiders blocking straight ahead, zone blocking kind of thing. Just sort of fit the niche here.
A lot of people have talked about Joe Green being the guy that sort of changed the arc of the franchise when he came in a couple years before you were drafted, but you've also identified Franco Harris as a key figure for the Steelers offense.
Yeah, well, Franco was the missing piece. I came in 71. We had an excellent draft in 71. I think we had 6 or 7 starters for the Super Bowl teams. Jack Ham was the 2nd-round pick. Frank Lewis was the 1st-round pick, wide receiver. Mike Wagner, Glenn Edwards.
Dwight
White, Larry Brown, myself. We had a great draft, and we were getting the pieces put together, but like Franco was the outside threat that we didn't have running the ball, and the way our offensive line was structured, we were basically set up to be running outside, pulling, trapping. And Franco was one of those kind of backs, could read the holes very well, and he would bust some big plays, and that opened up the passing game for Bradshaw, so it was sort of a culmination of everything coming together.
I want to take you back to Super Bowl IX because points are hard to come by in that game, taking on the Vikings. Franco runs left, you pull around, you get the big block on Wally Hildenberg. Do You remember that? Can you take me through that play?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I think a 37 special or something. I dipped around and Wally Hilgenberg was coming up full speed, and I knew that I had to like try to stop him because Franco was always like on my hip, you know. He really set up the blocks for his linemen, you know. And so I decided instead of staying up high on him, I'd go down low and cut him because I knew he was running full speed. He had to sell out. And I went down low on him and he hit the ground, and Franco moved around the outside and he basically walked in for the winning score.
Is that block a highlight? Do you think about that? Because that shows up on, listen, it's a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Hey, I was on CBS or one of the networks, they called me because of that block. That was probably the only time I was ever on national TV, because back in that era, linemen were like one step above maybe the punter, and all the publicity you get was usually bad. A holding call, offsides, or your man beat you and killed the quarterback, So we sort of like just stayed amongst ourselves. We were happy to be, low profile.
You also, in that, you had a real championship drive late in that game, and we just grounded down the field. Franco and Rocky Bleier, you had a big run right off of right guard. I think it was Rocky Bleier had that, almost a 20-yard run. What does that feel like as an offensive line take control of a game, and they know you want to run it, and you run it, and they can't stop you?
Yeah, well, that's the whole key. You've got to maintain control of the football if you want to win. We had a great defense. They always gave us opportunities, and in those big games, like I said, Dallas, the Vikings, they had great defenses. It wasn't an easy task, believe me. And especially, like I said, we were an undersized group, but we worked hard, and we were able to stay together for the most part. Ray Mansfield transitioned over to Mike Webster at center, and the rest of us were pretty much together, for most of the time. John Cold, Sam Davis, Webster, Larry Brown, Gordon Gravel, those guys. Offensive line, you need to have continuity, because you rely on people without necessarily even talking. You just get a feel for doing things on the move, and by having that group together for so long, it just became second nature sometimes. You had comfort of knowing that your teammate next to you was on the same wavelength as you were, so it made your job a lot easier.
One Super Bowl became 2, and then 3, and then 4 in a short period of time for your whole career, 71 to 79. What's that like when you look back at that era of dominance?
Well, my football career was 9 years. I just think that, it was amazing. Nobody could have even dreamed about having that kind of a run. We were the team of the 70s, probably one of the greatest teams in the history of the NFL. But, it's just amazing. Stayed a Steeler for life.
What is it like for you to be in the Steelers Hall of Honor?
Well, it's an amazing thing, When I got the call from Art II telling me I was going to be inducted, I couldn't believe it. I was grateful of having the opportunity to play with so many great players, and I took a lot of pride in seeing Franco get the Hall of Fame, Terry Bradshaw, because our offensive line as a group, made that happen. We were the engine that ran the offense. I took a lot of pride in that, and I never really felt like I missed out on any kind of honors, because it just wasn't what motivated us. We wanted to do whatever it took to make the team win the games. That was our motivation. And talking to my wife, she said, and this really put it into perspective, she said, after you're gone, our grandson could be down at the stadium with some of his buddies, point to your name up on that wall and say, that's my pap, It sort of makes me get a little, congested, knowing that it's not just a Steeler for life, it's Steeler for as long as there's the Steelers, It's really an honor.
That was beautiful. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.